Let's bring in Andrew Krammer, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune right now. Andrew, I'm going to engage you on some film review in a minute, but first, 3 hot takeaways. It's week 2 of the hot takeaways, and they're only getting hotter right now.
I can't wait.
As the Vikings get better, the takes get hotter. That's as promised, as advertised. I got to do it. So here is hot takeaway number 1 from that game. The Vikings could lead the league in sacks this season. They are actually leading the league in sacks right now with 11 through 2 games. They could lead the league in sacks this season.
Yeah, that's not too hot. Actually, you're starting mild. I like it. I think
that's kind of hot because I didn't think they were a lead the league in sacks kind of team coming into the season. You take away Danielle Hunter, and then you say they're going to lead the league in sacks, but.
That is, yeah. 2 weeks ago, I totally would have said too spicy for me. Now, though, after seeing what they did against a pretty good Niners front in terms of the offensive line and what they have in front of Purdy, they won one-on-one matchups. So I don't think that's too crazy. And when I look at what the contributors are doing, it's not just Jonathan Grenard. It's not just Andrew Van Ginkel. It's not just all the crazy blitz packages that we'll get into. It was guys like Pat Jones, who's in his 4th year. He was part of that infamous 2021 third round that, as Mike Zimmer told Mark Craig, he walked out of the room during that third round. He thought it was so bad. Well, Pat Jones is still here, and he's still a pretty good player, or has developed, I should say, into a good player. There was one rep on third down in the first half where he spun Trent Williams around. He was so physical, and that's Pat Jones's game. He's going to play a very, very violent style. It's not going to be speed around the edge like Grenard or Dallas Turner. And he can play his style, and Brian Flores knows how to set it up for success. And he's got 4 sacks now through 2 games. And that's not a type of DJ Wanham fluke that I've been seeing in the past where, okay, these are effort plays where it's taking 7 seconds for him to get there. No, this is quick pressure, and it's stuff that, one of them was unblocked and kind of schemed, but this guy's playing very well outside of just the sack numbers. And that's the kind of depth that when you've also got a first-round pick and Dallas Turner on the bench, I don't think it's too crazy for you to say that, hey, this team might lead the league in sacks this year after seeing what they can do on the field.
Zimmer probably could have used him on Sunday in Dallas. 44 points. His old nemesis, Alvin Kamara, not 6 touchdowns, but 4, 3 on the ground, 1 in the air. That was not his best defensive showing.
It was not. No, you're right. Mike Zimmer might have wanted to stay in the room for Pat Jones, at least what he developed into. That's certainly the case.
Okay, this will lead into number 2.
Great job. Great job.
Okay, it was Brock Purdy telling Brian Flores, defensive coordinator, your scheme is crazy after the game. We just talked about Zimmer. We're talking about Flores. I'm going to say right now, this is the best Vikings defense since 2017. That takes some good Zimmer defenses out of the mix. 2018, 2019, even part of 2020 before they got hurt. I almost went back to 2015, but I was like, okay, 2017, they were the top-ranked defense in the NFL, both yards and points. We can't go that far back. But I'm saying this is their best defense since 2017.
Yeah, that's also not too crazy. I got to see it for the duration, right? I think that's even because holistically that you want to see them do this for 17 games in terms of the run, the pass. Jordan Mason still went for 100 yards on 20 carries. They still gave up 400 yards. They played so well on critical downs, on third downs, on fourth downs. And that was the hallmark of the Mike Zimmer defenses. You rank number 1 by limiting the yardage, which they didn't do on Sunday. But Zimmer's defense has always played so well on those key downs, got the opponent off the field. And that's clutch, including the red zone spot, the stops that they had. 2 turnovers on downs. One of them was at midfield. They're playing really well. And that goes back to coaching, too. I think Brian Flores, if you polled the NFL, I think Brian Flores would probably rank up there with Mike Zimmer among the best defensive minds and most well-respected defensive minds in the league. And you're seeing it. And they got talent, too. What they have in common with a team like 2017 is they've got veterans woven into a lot of young talent. Danielle Hunter was in his 3rd year that year, but Everson Griffin, Brian Robinson, obviously Harrison Smith was in his prime at that moment, but they had Xavier Rhodes also entering his prime. They had a lot of talent that was young, and then they had the guys who had been there and knew how to line people up. And there are moments like even in Sunday's game where Stephon Gilmore, 13th year veteran, will absolutely know this defense inside and out, comes soon. But there was a moment he had to motion early in the game, and you could see Byron Murphy, excuse me, kind of position where he needed to be and kind of check him and affirm that, yeah, you're in the right spot. And that's the kind of stuff that, if people pay attention to the news around the league, the Packers had a deal with their defense where a rookie lined up in the wrong spot and didn't get to play much for the rest of the game. And Matt LaFleur said afterward, he said, it's on all of us to make sure this kid's lined up properly. There should be veterans helping him. Well, the Vikings defense is doing that. And they're doing that with even 13th year guys in Gilmore, where it'd be really easy to say, you know what, dude, you got it. I'm not even going to pay attention to you. They're all working kind of in one. And that it speaks to the coaching. It speaks to the chemistry. And I do think that when you look at the stats, they're among the older average defenses in the league, but it's because you've got two 34-year-old guys in there too, in Gilmore and Harrison Smith.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the linebackers, we can't overstate how upgraded they are right now. But Cashman's having a big impact. Van Ginkel, who we talked about a ton last week, again, this week he had the deflection on the goal line on that pass, the fourth down play that stalls that drive. He had a sack. He almost had another Van Ginkel. He almost had another interception on his signature play at the end of the game. He's making an impact as well.
He is too. And there was one I'd forgotten about early in the game when the Niners were backed up against their own goal line trying to get out of it. He keyed on a late George Kittle motion and almost got his hand on another one of those swing passes on a screen to Debo. This guy's so instinctual, so smart. Somebody that the league clearly should have valued more, because he only got, I think, $10 million per year on the open market. He's just so versatile, and in the right hands, like Brian Flores or Vic Fangio last year in Miami, he can do a lot of things and be very, very good. If you all you did was say, hey, go rush the passer 40 times a game, he's not going to be as impactful for you if you kind of turn him into this jack of all trades, this Josh Metellus of the defensive line. You can really see his game come to life. And so that's another guy, when we talk about the depth, it stood out to me. And to put numbers on when we talk about this defensive depth, they had 18 different guys play almost 20% of the snaps yesterday.
Wow.
They had 13 guys reach that mark last year against the Niners in their win. It just shows you how many more guys are trusted. It's the same defensive staff, same defensive coordinator. They've just got a better roster.
Yeah, they do. No doubt about it. More talent. And they upgraded that a lot in the offseason, and it is showing so far. Yeah. Hot takeaway number 3. I have been one of the foremost critics of the Vikings offensive line for a number of years, dating back even before we started doing any sorts of podcasts, but it's been kind of a yearly gripe of mine. I think this might be their best offensive line since 2009. When they had Favre, when they had a bunch of veterans, they had Hutchinson still back then. They were a solid offensive line back in 2009. I have not seen a better offensive line kind of 1 through 5 since then. Obviously, you get the cornerstone tackles. I think the interior line has actually at least been adequate so far. I know they're going to give up some pressures, but they've been running the ball better. And I don't feel like Sam Darnold has had that like constant in your face up the middle pressure that I worried he was going to get throughout the season.
Yeah, I needed to go back and check and make sure I remembered who was starting on the offensive line in 2017, because I do remember Joe Berger being very good for them. Oh, that's right. It was Nick Easton, Pat Elflein, and Joe Berger in the middle, Riley Reif and Mike Remmers on the outsides. That's the only other offensive line I remember being as cohesive as this group. This group's been together from O'Neal to Darisaw all the way across, including Brandell, who was a backup for a few years. They've been together for, I think, at least 3 years since Ed Ingram was drafted. That's huge. That doesn't happen a lot on offensive lines. And even when Ed Ingram is not playing well, because that is probably where I should have started, he's one of the worst guards, I think, right now, according to Pro Football Focus in the NFL. And yesterday wasn't great for him either. I think he's such a weak link there that I would hesitate to say that they're any kind of great offensive line. But your point might be valid, only in that, Mike, it's damning with faint praise. They haven't had a lot of great offensive line.
No, they have not. I've well documented. I've well documented that. I think the only line I thought of that could contend with this was the 2012 line where everybody made all 16 starts. I don't think it was a great line, but it had continuity, blocked for the Adrian Peterson 2,000 rushing yard season. Got to the playoffs with Christian Ponder at quarterback, but that felt like it was more about continuity than it was about excellence.
I think you might be here with this line as well. They have the best tackles they've had maybe since 09 or well before that.
Yeah.
You're right. This is one of the best tackle tandems. And Blake Brandel at left guard has played pretty well.
I think he's been pretty good.
He's given them a physicality in the run game. He hasn't been beaten quickly in pass protection, which is what the most you can ask for from a guy who's stepping in there to start for his first time at that spot. And so it's really Bradbury's fought a knee injury early, picked it up in that week 1 win at New York. It's been him up and down, and then in Ingram, and they know that they've schemed around it. They've tried to get Sam Darnold on the move. There was an early third down that Sam Darnold had to pick up with his legs when the coverage had taken away his options downfield, and he had to run. And I think that's also a key difference, Mike, is that this offensive line is going to look better, not just because of Aaron Jones setting up blocks in the run game, but when there is pressure, Sam Darnold can move. And we see that Kirk Cousins, even pre-Achilles, was not moving.
Yeah, and that was going to be that one missed the cut. I'm going to save that one for a week because we didn't see a week 2 of Cousins, but I was almost ready to say dollars or no dollars. Would you rather have Darnold or Cousins right now?
After what we saw week 1 from Atlanta, and there was a couple clips I saw people throwing out there saying, hey, you don't see this go viral, and it's of him actually running and throwing a dart in the end zone when he was in one of the red zone plays, but they didn't score a touchdown. They didn't look good offensively. Statistically, it was horrendous. You just see the coaching be so conservative with him. I do wonder, and honestly, Zach Robinson, I think, is a first-year coordinator coming from the Rams running that thing under Raheem Morris. You just got to wonder how much the coordinator's figuring his thing out while Kirk is figuring out what he can do, and then they're learning each other. It's going to take time. But Kirk would have looked differently here. He still would have looked good, I think, here, even if he would have been less mobile than he already was, because the Vikings knew how to work with that. But Sam Darnold's playing well. I mean, if we're going to talk about him, I think he's playing efficiently. He's making smart decisions. There's only a couple times where you're saying, don't throw that, and he did. But if the way he bounces back, too, from sacks, from critical errors, you're not seeing him drag in a way that in Carolina or with the Jets. You saw him get affected by his negative mistakes. And I think that's definitely a coaching point inside the Vikings building of trying to keep his confidence up. And frankly, it's easy to keep his confidence up when he's playing.